Trump echoing Hitler's final solution rhetoric. Mark Sumner writing about this over at Daily Kos, and it's a great piece. It's well worth reading. This, he says, this has become a tradition in American politics, the one where major media outlets fixate on some perceived flaw in a Democratic candidate while ignoring a Republican threatening to bring on an end of the Republic. And this time, Mark Sumner notes, with a side order of World War III. Trump spoke at an NRA event Friday night last week, and besides bragging that during his time at the White House, I did nothing to control guns in any way, right? He also promised a door-to-door effort to collect migrants and put millions of them in enormous detention camps within moments. That's a verbatim quote, within moments of taking office. He also said we don't know who they is, presumably the globalists that he says he's going to take out. Globalists is typically right-wing code language for Jews. He says they would change Pennsylvania's name, and he added he had personally witnessed a migrant stealing a refrigerator. Really? How do you do that? How do you steal a refrigerator? I don't know. Anyhow, the most frightening thing, I mean, Trump, maybe he's never seen a refrigerator. You know, he's lived a rich man's life. He's always had, cooks and chefs and people who bring the food to him, and probably never walks into the kitchen. I doubt he has any idea how much a refrigerator weighs. But Sumner points out the most frightening thing of all is silence of the American press. And I think that this is, a really important point. And it's absolutely true. That, you go back to 11 days before the 2016 election, the front page of the New York Times, the top half, above the fold, was 3 stories about Hillary's emails because of James Comey's press conference. I mean, Comey's press conference sabotaged Hillary Clinton and handed the White House to Donald Trump, along with all of the, I believe it was over 100 million impressions. I'd have to go back and look at the exact numbers that were generated in social media by the Russian troll farms. But the national press just basically pretty much not talking about Trump and very much embracing this idea that there's something wrong with Biden, specifically his age. Justin Rosario, I think, one of the guys, anyhow, writing over at the Daily Banter, Ben Cohen's newsletter. Ben's been a guest on this program many times. Daily Banter is over on Substack also. Writing this morning about how he believes it's a plot that has been going on for years and years and years, that the media makes the most money when you have horse race elections. And so, they spend 6, 8, 9 months leading up to the election trying to lift the underdog, which is almost always a Republican, because Republican policies are just generally not all that popular. Cut taxes on billionaires, allow more poison and pollution in our water and air, give big corporations the permission to wipe out small businesses. I mean, just these Republican, privatize Social Security and Medicare. These policies just are not that popular. So, lifting up Donald Trump as opposed, or cutting down, actually, Hillary Clinton in 2016 was a major project of the New York Times, according to the Daily Banter. And I think it certainly, Mark Sumner points out, Trump isn't promising a final solution to the Jewish problem, which is that was Hitler's line. Instead, he's promising, and his phrase is, a final battle rather than a final solution to, and I quote Donald Trump, to drive out the globalists, end quote. Well, again, globalists is one of the more common ways that people on the hard right refer to Jewish people, and Jewish businessmen in particular, politicians. He says, this is his stump speech. Donald Trump says this at the end of every one of his rallies now. It's, right out of the prompter. He says, we will demolish the deep state. Now, keep in mind, the deep state is our government. Donald Trump is promising he's going to take down the American government. He goes on to say, we will expel the warmongers. Well, who's that? I mean, you know, Vladimir Putin is the only guy that I know of right now who is like aggressively, actively trying to seize other countries. He's, you know, he's going after he's gone after Ukraine. In his long, rambling conversation with Tucker Carlson, repeatedly, he talked about Poland in a way that suggests that he thinks that Poland should be next on his, you know, in his sights. Anyhow, back to Trump. He says, "We will drive out the globalists." Again, I ask, who's he talking about? He says, "We will cast out the communists." You know, I did this years ago on this program. This was the last time somebody was talking about the communists. I think it was during the Bush administration. And so I got the president of the Communist Party of the United States on this program. If you've been listening for a while, I mean, this is like 15 years ago or more. And I was like, you know, so you're the president of the communists, you know, the head of the Communist Party of USA. He's like, yep, we're doing well. And I said, well, how many members do you have? And he says, well, I think we're up to, what was the number, Sean? Like 3,000? 3,500, something like that? Yeah, maybe 35,000. It was some pathetic number, right? I mean, there's no communists left in America. You've got, you know, you got a few people who call themselves Marxists, you know, maybe, but, you know, they're not really even communists. So anyhow, this is just Trump. You know, we're going to cast out the communists. He goes on to say, we will throw off the political class that hates our country. Oh, really? You're going to get rid of the Republican Party? He says, we will beat the Democrats. Right, we'll see. He says, we will rout the fake news media. Yes, he has promised that people like me will end up in prison or in one of his concentration camps if he becomes president. And I'm taking it as word for it. You know, if Donald Trump gets elected president in November of this year, Louise and I are going to have some really serious decisions to make. It's, you know, and I think everybody in the media is. You know, do we flee the country or not? Now, I'm saying that half tongue in cheek. I intend to stay and fight and continue speaking. But the media did not fare well. I mean, reporters in Hungary found themselves in jail after Viktor Orban took over. Reporters in Russia are in prison right now. Reporters in the Philippines were taken down when Duterte came to power. Reporters in Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, you know, put them in jail. So he says he's going to do that. He says, we will expose and appropriately deal with the rise in name only. Appropriately deal with? I mean, this is authoritarian 101. We will evict Joe Biden from the White House. Well, you know, I suppose you could say that's political, you know, over-the-top political rhetoric. And then he goes on to say, and we will liberate America from these villains and scoundrels once and for all. Once and for all? Really? You're going to eliminate us? Yeah, that is what Hitler was saying he was going to do. He had a final solution. Trump has a final battle. As Mark Sumner points out, these are not some random one-off firing of Trump's jagged synapses. This is his standard closing. This is his promise to the nation. And Mark goes on to say there is a word for what Trump is promising when he says he wants to expel, drive out, cast out, throw off, rout, and evict. That word is pogrom. And then, you know, to compound that, he comes out the following day on Saturday and says he wants to let Russia do whatever the hell they want with NATO countries. But still, after this speech on Friday night, literally echoing Hitler, as Mark Sumner points out, still the front page of the New York Times on Saturday morning had 3 stories about President Joe Biden's age and nothing about Trump's repeated threats or his claim that they were out to get Pennsylvania. You got Lindsey Graham saying, give me a break. I mean, it's Trump, right? Don't pay attention to what he says. Marco Rubio, I have zero concern. Retired General Keith Kellogg, I don't think it's encouragement at all. We all know what he means. Right, that dismissive attitude of the press about Republicans calling for basically the end of the republic or the end of the idea of America as a multicultural, multiracial, functioning democracy. Now, I get the argument. We're not a democracy anymore. We're actually an oligarchy. And in fact, I make that argument regularly. Jimmy Carter made that argument on this program about 7 years ago. But that said, we still have the features of a democracy, and I think we can restore our democracy.